So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's Way Forward workshop, Leader Lunch Break. We are pleased to welcome Dr. Elad Granot to our conversation. Dr. Granot brings a wealth of experience and expertise in marketing, management, entrepreneurship, and leadership to his new role as Dean of the Boler College of Business at John Carroll University. Prior to joining John Carroll, he led the Business College at Ashland, served as Dean of the College of Business Administration at Rider University, and Assistant Dean at Monte Ahuja College of Business at Cleveland State. He leaves his mark wherever he goes, as evidenced by the fact that he doubled Ashland's MBA program in 6 short years and launched an entrepreneurial effort that spawned 50 new businesses. Making an impact in higher ed is just the most recent application of his abundant talents. He has served as an officer in the Israeli Defense Forces, chief marketing officer for KPMG in Tel Aviv, and CEO leading a large media production company. His wisdom is sought after as he is an advisor to a $450 million venture capital fund and has been on multiple boards, including Cleveland Jewish News, Nochi, Launch House, Blockland, and he's currently serving on the board of Ohio X. This is all in addition to founding and managing a boutique venture capital firm dedicated to early stage technology. He was recently recognized by Crain's Cleveland Business as a notable immigrant leader and called a dynamic, forward-thinking higher ed entrepreneur and a successful servant leader of people, programs, and institutions committed to challenging the status quo. We're thrilled to have you join us today, Dr. Granot.
Thank you. All I could think was, I wish my mother was on this Zoom, but I appreciate everyone being here in her stead. And so I'd like to, time is limited, and I was asked to talk about leadership in higher education. I know there's some colleagues from higher education here, so don't hold your breath. I'm going to talk about leadership, and I am in higher education. And so it's not necessarily the same thing, and maybe it is. And so if you don't mind, I'll share my screen now, and I'll narrate some of the slides and probably go completely off those slides as I'm known to do. Luckily, there's a time limit here. Good to see colleagues and friends. Michael, good to see you in the Zoom. It was even better seeing you in person last week. Can you guys see this? Yes, excellent. So I'd like to begin by maybe a little bit of an introduction about my leadership record, a little bit more concrete than the fabulous introduction that I'm going to record and put on every profile I have that Marianne made. And so if we look at why am I talking about leadership, it's primarily from experience. I've been in a position of leadership for over 30 years. By the time I was 19, I was a lieutenant in the Israeli Defense Forces. I was in command of 60 Special Forces fighters. I looked like that. I'm the guy on the right, believe it or not, I don't care, that's me. And I was in command, 19, and before my 20th birthday, already in command. And that was a school of leadership, both in terms of becoming an officer, but also in terms of being an officer. And I'll talk about that and how that impacted the rest of my career up to this point. After that, I went into business, and I was in a variety of executive senior leadership positions all over the world in multiple industries. I've advised startups like Kaltura. I've advised my good friend Alex Cruz, who's the CEO and president of British Airways. I've been all over the world, fortunate to be in leadership positions, fortunate to be working with leaders and providing advice, consulting, and strategy. And so I've been doing that after my military career, and somehow found myself in higher education, where, and I'm going to give it to you right now, if you're going to look for leadership in higher education, the way I see it, and if you don't believe me that I'm doing it, here's a picture of me doing it, is really doing two things. It's providing resources and removing obstacles. If you do these two things as a leader in higher education or anywhere else for that matter, you are serving your constituents to the best of your ability and even beyond, because you're providing them with opportunities to take you, the team, the organization beyond what you can do on your own, as gifted a leader as you may be. And so it really is this dual relationship between removing obstacles, providing resources that I think provides the most challenging set of opportunities for any leader and for the organization and the team that they lead. I usually talk about Maxwell's 5 levels of leadership. When I talk about leadership, and I've been fortunate enough to be in a variety of either panels or presentations where I did talk about it, and I thought I would take it maybe a step further today, because I know many of you are familiar with that. All I can do is reflect on starting off as a young officer. I certainly was in a position, level 1, simply by the stripes that I had on my shoulders, and I could give orders, and most of the times they were followed primarily because I outranked whoever I gave the orders to. And that's an entry level of leadership. Certainly in the military, it makes a lot of sense. But transitioning into business, it's not enough. You could outrank, so to speak, some of the executives around you and other staff that work on your team or in the organization, but that's not going to really move you to where you need to move. And you sort of find yourself as a leadership evolution process, climbing through these. If you're a self-aware leader, which is another trait that isn't necessarily easy to develop, but I think is critical for a successful leader. And so we'll go through these, as I really go to the next level of discussing these, and these are my 10 action steps towards reaching the pinnacle, right? If the pinnacle is getting to a point where people want to follow you, where you're developing other leaders and you're an accomplished leader, what in my career did I find that would fit into a 10 action step plan towards getting towards the pinnacle? And number 1, and these aren't necessarily ranked by order of importance. I think they're all important to get you to where you are at level 5 and beyond. And as I go through these 1 to 10, you can rank them on a scale of 1 to 10, and if you add them up, it wouldn't be 100. This is not an addition exercise. This is a multiplication exercise. So if any of these are a 0, the entire thing is a 0. And so keep that in mind. It's 10 action steps, but they're all intertwined and all impact each other and the rest of them. And so number 1, just for sake of order, is being committed to developing these skills. Actually being aware of being a leader, of being in a leadership position, and understanding that you are not at a point where you have nothing more to learn. You can't develop as a leader. So soliciting feedback is critical. Valuing continuous improvement, showing an interest in learning, I think is absolutely crucial. And committing to balancing work and personal life, which is something I insist on doing, not just for myself, but for my team members. I think it's incredibly important to balancing personal life and work. If I had to say it in a more maybe a weighted scale, is critical in order to be on the way to ascending to level 5. So that's number 1. Number 2 is strategic planning. Without strategy, leadership is really useless. And when I put OKR in here, OKR is my go-to. For those that don't know, that's Andy Grove from Intel came up with a system that is based on objectives and known results. And the bottom line is it's pretty simple. It's 3 to 5 things that the organization is focusing on and how you measure them, right? Objectives and how you measure them, known results. And the organization has 3 to 5. Most of us can't remember more than 3 to 5. Most of us can't focus on more than 3 to 5. My military training has been all in 3s. So my mind is sort of programmed into 3s. And so you have 3 to 5 things that you're focusing on. What are the goals, priorities, and what are the plans to get you there? There's the organization 3 to 5 things, and then every unit has their own, and they have to fit into the organization's objectives and get measured by the known results. And so strategy, incredibly critical for being an effective leader, for being a level 5 leader. You have to focus on your constituents. Leadership, I could give you all the sports analogies. You can't be a captain without a team and all the other stuff. It's all true. Bottom line is, leadership is non-existent without a team. You can't be a leader without having constituents that actually are members of your team. And so you have to provide service to your customers, your consumers, your students, no matter what the organization, at the highest priority. And I think it's critical in many industries. I think in higher ed, there's still debate about our students, our customers or not. Just so it's clear, I think they are. Recognizing and rewarding people who deliver excellent service is of course, incredibly important. And obtaining reactions all the time, I think is how you focus on your constituents, both internal and external. Innovation. Without innovation, we simply die. I don't want to sound too dramatic, but innovation is the engine of any economy, of any organization. And in organizations that don't innovate fall in the wayside. And then you really have two options as a leader. One is not innovating and understanding that not moving forward by default, you're actually moving backwards because the entire competitive set is moving forward. So innovation is critical, and being innovative as a leader, I think, is what sets leaders apart. Encouraging others on the team to be innovative, to not be afraid of failure. I think failure is one of the most important things in innovation. Most innovative efforts and initiatives are a result of multiple failures. And so coming from the VC world and being in the VC world, I can tell you that if we hit an 8% success rate on our portfolio company, we're doing amazingly well. We're rock stars. That means we fail 92% of the time. And if we don't learn from our failures, we're really not doing a good job or as good a job as we could be doing. So encouraging a failure in the sense that you can only fail if you try something. The only way to avoid failure is not trying anything, and you don't want that as a leader. Innovation is something you have to push forward. So taking risks, I think, is critical for an effective leader. Being ethical, maybe it shouldn't be stated, maybe it should be obvious, but I'm putting in here because it's incredibly important to lead by example. Your team knows you and understands how you act by what you display, what you say, and how they're connected. And so being responsible for actions, again, going back to what I just said about failures, it's okay to fail as a leader. It's okay, just fess up to it and understand what you can learn from it. But understanding that ethical behavior should be exhibited, should be modeled, and that is the only way you can expect for it to be followed. And if you say something, do it. And if you don't do it, explain why you didn't, but be the same in terms of what you say and what you do, because people around you listen to what you say as a leader. They expect you to live up to what you said. And I make notes of things that I say, and because I want to make sure I don't forget to carry out a promise, to carry out a commitment. And of course, if you create a climate of trust, which can only come through honesty. And so, so many cliches about the best policy and all the other stuff, it's 100% true. It's a cliche because it's true. Honesty is absolutely the best policy. Again, if you're not afraid of failing, then honesty shouldn't be an issue. And if you're an ethical person, honesty will be a part of your leadership and how you conduct your team. Communication, I'm a marketing guy. Communicate, all this stuff doesn't matter if you don't communicate, right? You could be the most ethical person, the most ethical leader. You could do all the stuff that I just said. If nobody knows about it, it's not happening. And so how do you get the word out effectively with everyone? How do you give feedback on performance? How do you listen? I think I put it as the last bullet point here. I would start with that. Listening is incredibly important. Stakeholders, frontline employees are the ones that actually represent the organization and the team to your constituents. They're the ones that hear about things that should be fixed, corrected, modified. They're the ones that get the praise. They're the ones that get the criticism. And understanding how to listen is a critical role for an effective leader. Relationships. Again, like I said, all these things are intertwined, right? If any of these are zero, all of it is a zero. You need to establish relationships. I always say that some people say it's not personal, it's business. And I always say business is personal. It's 100% personal. I could get into the no a-hole rule that I'm sure you've heard about. But the bottom line is you want to work with people that you respect and that you can gain their respect. You want to build relationships beyond the business, beyond your enterprise. People that you genuinely like and respect will perform better for the team, for themselves, and you'll perform better as a leader. Demonstrating an appreciation of diversity. I'm very proud of all the accolades that Marianne listed. I'm very proud of being recognized for being an immigrant. I truly believe in the importance of diverse points of view, diverse backgrounds, diverse ways of thinking, diverse understandings of reality. There's more than one. Being on a team, I think one of the worst things you could do is get into this funnel of groupthink, of everyone being from the same background, same sort of experience set. You're not doing justice to everything else I just said in points 1 to 6. And of course, win-win is an outcome that is attainable, but you need to be, and I'll get to point 11 out of 10 because I said 10, but I always over deliver, and I'll get back to the win-win part of things. Eventually, you have to make decisions, and I think that really is a skill that you develop over time. Sometimes you think you're ready to make decisions. Sometimes you make decisions that you regret. Sometimes you make decisions that you modify. But making the decision is not an easy task. It brings with it a lot of responsibility, and so you need to get a lot of input. You need to make sure that you evaluate how the decision you're about to make will impact what will be its consequences, what will be its unintended consequences, and you really need to also appreciate the people on your team that can make decisions when you delegate decision making to them. In general, I try to have people on my team that are better than me at what they do, and the logic behind that is quite simple. If they're not, then what do I need them for, right, Danny? And so she's joining my team. And so, it's always, there's an ego situation here. You got to let that go. The idea is to have people around you that are better than you. They'll make you a better leader. They'll make everyone else a better leader. And if the time comes when they're so good that they need to go or have to go or get an offer to go somewhere else, good. You've reached level 5. You've developed other leaders. Okay, that's a good thing. Speaking of good things, you need to talk about, first of all, you need to be inspiring. Again, it's not something you wake up in the morning and go, I'm going to be inspiring today, right? But you communicate clearly what is expected. You insist on high quality. I just had a meeting this morning about the most minute of details that I just happened to notice in something that we're doing. I happened to notice it, and as my assistant dean said to me, of course you would be the one noticing it, right? I literally looked at the thing for 3 seconds and found, typos. And so, by the way, they're probably the only typos in the whole thing, but I found them because I did. And so I stayed calm, and I said, this has to be fixed because we have to insist on high quality. We can't be believed to be providing high quality if we don't do it ourselves. And praising and congratulating and finding reasons to celebrate, I think, are a critical part of being a leader. I think Jack Welch once said that being a leader, you need to be the chief party officer. And I completely agree with that. Find reasons to celebrate. There are multiple reasons to celebrate. Celebrate, recognize. It makes you a better leader. It makes everything else that I've said in points 1 to 8 more effective. And then you get to the point where you develop others. And so I talked about that a little bit. You develop others. You get to the point where you are a role model. You're setting challenges. You're helping managers, and they get to a point where they're good, so good that somebody else wants them, or they have other things that they want to do. That is a good thing. Let go. This is partly your achievement. This is why you're a leader. This is why you're in the organization. It's all about people. It's all about being a member of the team, whether you're a leader or not. And as a bonus, I know I'm over, but I just one more thing that I think is critically important, maybe even more important than all the previous points. You have to be empathic. If you're not, you shouldn't be in a leadership position. There's so many things that we're facing and as leaders today, from the public, from if you talk about higher ed, it's taking its own justified share of criticism from many stakeholders. You need to be someone who understands who you are, what your position is in the organization, what your responsibility is towards the organization and your stakeholders and your team members. And by displaying this empathy, and it's not fragility. It's nothing to be embarrassed about, by displaying this empathy, not that fragility is something to be embarrassed about. You model these qualities that you expect, specifically as since I am in higher ed, the core of what we do in higher education, authenticity, openness to vigorous debate, and I'm done.
Dr. Granot, thank you so much. You covered such a large amount of space in such a short amount of time, and we thank you for that. So let's talk a little bit more about some of the leadership advice. So giving and receiving good feedback. So many are hesitant to hear what might be perceived as negative or to give something that might be constructive. What advice do you have for being able to give and receive good feedback that's helpful?
Yeah, so I think if you're going to give it, be ready to receive it, and that's a skill I've developed over the years. I have to say, it wasn't something I was born with. It's not easy. It's not fun to get criticism, but every time I did, I got a little better at it, in the sense that it took me less time to recover from it. It's not fun, right? Especially when you know it's true, right? That's even worse. When it's not true, you sort of negate it and you go, okay, I know what you mean, but when it's true, you go, oh yeah, that's actually true. You need to take some time to reflect. And if you're in that position where you're able to take criticism, then you should feel, I think, liberated to give it. Now, you need to be strategic about that, because you don't know how others are going to take it. It really depends on the situation. A couple of weeks ago, I gave harsh criticism, and I took some flack for it. Fine, at least people know where I stand.
And kind of building off of that, so being someone who is very focused on attention to detail and providing a lot of feedback, how do you not give the impression that others' efforts might not ever be good enough, because you can always improve upon a work or a product?
First of all, I don't want to give that impression. They can never be good enough. However, we shouldn't be in some sort of paralysis because of that. It's a state of mind, understanding, and I want to say, as a venture capitalist, as someone who does invest in early stage technology, I am a big fan of speed over perfection. I'll always take speed. By the way, in higher ed as well, almost in anything, it's better to do something, fix it on the fly, than wait for it to be perfect, because it never will, per your question. And so striving for perfection, while understanding that it can't be reached, is the healthy balance. And again, failure is a journey towards perfection. And so again, if I ever have time, I'm going to write a book about all the business failures. Business schools always have these textbooks about all these amazing things that succeeded. That's boring. Let's read about all the amazing crashes that happened, New Coke and all the other stuff. That's a lot more interesting.
So let's talk about a time when you took a risk. Maybe it didn't turn out the way that you thought. What did you learn from that? How do you carry that forward? Yeah,
well, there's so many times. Like I said, 92% of the time, and that's probably being generous. I make a living out of taking risks in venture capital, not so much in higher ed, although sometimes it feels like I do. And so it is. You need to be able to do it. Now, I'm grateful for my background, where I was formed in a military apparatus that encourages risk-taking at the junior level, respects it, awards it, rewards it, and certainly doesn't criticize it. And so I've done so so many times that and again, failed a lot more than I succeeded. And the point is, it never put me in a situation where I second guessed myself and said I wouldn't do that again. Because if it succeeds, that's great. Everybody's happy. If it doesn't, okay, what have we learned? But I think if there's one thing I can drive through my team, through my organization, both up and down. So I'm a pretty senior guy where I am now, but there's a couple people above me. If I could get them to be a little bit more to take more risks, then I think my job as a leader, as someone who has responsibilities in the organization, is done.
What has been a greatest challenge for you that you've faced in your leadership roles?
So thank you. It's almost like we discussed this. We didn't. I'll tell you. So like I said, in the military, it was easy. Lieutenant tells us, a sergeant to do something, sergeant does it, great. Executive positions, chief marketing officer says, do this, the budget's that, great. Then I end up in higher ed. Everyone has a PhD. Everyone's tenured. I can't fire anybody. I can't tell them what to do. I don't really, it's funny to me when some of my faculty say, this is my boss. I'm not their boss. I literally can't tell them anything. And so leadership in higher ed has been my biggest challenge. And I've learned a lot from it. What I learned is, if I can put it in a nutshell, is that there's always, in every academic institution that I've been in, there's always a core group of faculty, 2 of them I can see on the screen right now, who do stuff anyway. They're proactive, they're ambitious. By the way, I once got feedback when I was in another academic institution that I was, someone called me ambitious and I said, thank you. They said, no, in higher ed, that's not a compliment. Anyway, but there are, right? And there's this group of faculty that always do things, faculty and staff. What I learned is gather them around me, provide them with resources, remove obstacles, and they get stuff done. When they get stuff done, I'm doing something incredibly revolutionary. I'm giving them extra compensation. I know no one's ever heard of that. So they do well, I pay them more, and now we get members of the team, the extended members of the team who are not necessarily as active, showing interest, right? Hey, what's going on there? And the secret, if there is one, is to not harbor resentment over the fact that in the beginning, when you tried to do things, these folks didn't want to come on board. And the secret is say, you're welcome. Here's what you can do to join this team. So I've learned that the hard way, by the way. It wasn't always like that. In the beginning, I did say, hey, remember when you guys said that? Well, screw you. No, that doesn't work.
What innovations do you foresee in higher education, specifically around business schools?
I think the most important thing, and it's not even an innovation, I'm embarrassed that I have to list it as an innovation, is making sure the graduates of business schools today, and honestly, any academic program, and my undergrad major is in English literature, and I'm a big fan of the liberal arts as what we call the core of a higher education. But I think what we're missing today, certainly in business schools, but in any other, especially liberal arts, arts and sciences, is a technological core. The technology has gotten to the point where it's everywhere. There is no more technology in business. Business is technology. Look at us now. Look at what we're doing. And so how do I let a finance major graduate from Boler without understanding fintech? How do I let an accounting major from Boler graduate without understanding blockchain? How do they not understand what AI is and how you could apply it? They don't understand it because we don't teach it. We're going to change that.
And as you look ahead for the next 5+ years, what's your vision for the Boler College?
So we have positioned ourselves quite boldly, and my colleagues from the region will excuse me, and they're welcome to debate it. We've positioned ourselves as Cleveland's business school. And so we're responsible to the Northeast Ohio ecosystem. We literally are the only function in the ecosystem, and I'm a big believer in ecosystems. We're the only function in the ecosystem that's charged in its mission to produce talent into the ecosystem, right? That's what we do. No other organization does that. They do it when we don't do it well enough, right? So you read about Google saying, hey, we'll train you how to be a whatever, right? And the reason is we don't train them how to do it. So of course they're going to fill that void. So my responsibility as a dean of Cleveland's business school is making sure that we provide Cleveland with what it needs in terms of business talent. And it needs a lot, right? In every discipline, there's a huge shortage in everything that we provide. And so what we need to be doing is provide more of that. We have more diversity in terms of the product offering. And so if you look at our grad programs, we have an MBA, we have a master's in innovation and entrepreneurship, and we're about to have a master's in nonprofit administration. Why? Because we're in Northeast Ohio. You're welcome, Mike. And so, this is who we are. We are a local partner in the ecosystem. We're a responsible citizen in the ecosystem, and where we need to be is provide the technological proficiency that I was talking about, in addition to all the disciplines that we just discussed.
Well, we have quickly come up to our 12:30 time mark, and we are so thankful for the insights that you have shared. We have had a few requests if you would be willing to share your slides with those of us on the call today.
Happy to. If you shoot me an email, I'll send it to you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And with that, I'm going to turn it back to Mary Ann.
That was fabulous. Thank you so very much. I know we're going to have a lot of folks who weren't able to join us for lunch today tuning in after to capture some of this great wisdom.